Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. This week's guest, Rosemarie, is a divorced mum of 3 sons. She's the creator of 2 podcasts, SoloMoms and Talk and Tools of the podcast trade. She began her broadcast journey in 2014 when she started an online radio station to encourage single mums to find the answers to their questions. She considers herself a mindset maven who believes mindset is everything and things only happen when you have the courage to believe. Yeah, she's right there. One example is when she drove 900 miles with her kids and all their belongings packed into a Toyota Camry to accept a 2-week job and didn't even know where they were going to live. She has dealt with the sacrifices and fortitudes that it takes to raise 3 sons on your own, having multiple careers and jobs, dealing with being homeless, traveling across several states to work, and she is here with us today to tell us what it means to have the courage to believe and just do. Welcome to the podcast, Rosemarie. How are you?
I'm good, Claire. Thank you for having me.
No, welcome. I can't wait to talk to you. So look, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you've got to where you have, because you're a little bit crazy to be driving 900 miles with your kids in the car to a job, right? But if that's what you've got to do as a single parent, that's what you've got to do, isn't it? You've got to do what you've got to do. So tell us a bit about your background, but tell us a bit about who you are.
I'm going to do a quick and dirty overall first, and then, you can ask me questions for details.
We like quick and dirty here.
So I was born in Jamaica. I was raised by my granddad. My dad died when I was about 12, and I was shipped off to England to live with my mom, and I was an early teen and, taking on a new mom, and I couldn't stand it. So I left. I got married at 20, moved to Canada, got divorced, had a kid, got divorced, moved to the US, married again, had 2 more kids. That husband walked out when my 2 youngest were 2 and 4. And
wow.
I didn't hear from him for 2 years. I haven't seen him in 20-something years, 25, 26 years. Yeah.
Oh my God. That must have been hard.
I was fairly new to the US. I was just, finding my sea legs, so to speak. And then, I was left with these 2 little babies to raise. I didn't know anything. I really didn't know about anything about raising children, even though I had one. Nobody raised me. So I was like,
I don't think any of us does. I don't think any of us does. Even if you've been raised by in a what I would call a standard family, right, where you got mum and dad and all of that stuff. Nobody knows. None of us kids come with a blueprint, do we? So nobody knows. Wow. And I suppose because he just walked out, no child support, no money coming in, all the onus was on you to basically look after these 3 kids, feed them, clothe them, make sure they've got a house over their head and all of that stuff. Oh, my God. How did you go?
Fortunately, my oldest was still in Canada with his dad. I wanted to make sure that, the truth's there. But it was a hard thing. I was in insurance. I started an insurance agency in my home. I was good at sales. So I did it, and I thought that, it would be nice to just be home with my kids, because the first time I took the middle one to daycare, he cried all day. I mean, all day. Wow. I dropped him about 8.
And how old is he now?
No, he's 29
yes, I bet he
now.
loves hearing that, Mum.
Keep missing 2 years.
Oh, so I bet you he
Yeah,
loves hearing that.
So I decided I wanted to stay home with them, and insurance was the perfect thing, you know. But then the agency stuff would have taken a lot more, you know, with 2 young kids and new to the country. It was very difficult. And so I switched to real estate. And I switched to real estate. It was really good. I mean, it's sales. It's all sales. It's, you know. And a year into my real estate career, the financial markets crashed. Oh, yeah.
Wow. So was that 2008?
It was 2006 that I started, and it started to crash at the end of 2006, 2007. Yeah.
2007,
here I was still trying to find my legs, and, you know, there was nothing. There was no work where I was, you know, and this was scary. This was scary stuff. And unfortunately, I had decided that I couldn't manage my kids alone, and another husband came into the picture. And we were going through my third divorce. So all of that was happening at the same time.
Wow.
And I was trained as a secretary. I never worked as a secretary, but I was trained. And it was like something said to him, why don't you just apply for that? Because, you know, that's easy. Somebody always needs a secretary. So I said, okay, I'll do it. But I did it in New York, right? I applied for it in New York because there were no jobs where I was. I tried Florida. I just tried different places. I didn't want to go to New York, but, you know, and...
Well, you have to go where the work is, don't you? If you've got kids relying on you, and you can get a job in another state or whatever. Well, you've got to go.
So anyway, after I won't get into too much of the story about how, because it's too long and involved, but I got a job. I went to New York for the interview, got a job, a 3-day job. And the second day they told me, we want to keep you for another 2 weeks. So can you come in? So I'm like 900 miles away from home. My kids are not living there, and they don't know that I'm not living in New York, right? So I said, it was another single mom too. It was really strange. I said, you know what? I don't live here. I don't even know if I can come back tomorrow, let alone Monday. And she said, you know what? I like your work, and I think if you can go home and sort through stuff and come back on Monday, you could leave today and you don't have to come in the third day, which is the next day, right?
Oh my God.
So long story short, I went home, packed everything up, gave away all my stuff, and drove with my 2 kids, yanked them out of school. Didn't even know where I was going to live. And connections, and the fact that I always kept in touch with people. I ended up with a room, you know, with my 2 boys on a double bed for 4 months. That's how I slept. And, you know, that's how I ended up in New York. And I left from a basement to working on Wall Street.
Wow.
PhDs and, you know, all kind of nice people. So
that's nuts.
So it was worth it.
Well, yeah, no, definitely, definitely. So like,
yeah.
Wow, that just seems insane. So like, how did you go then from being a secretary, living in a room for 4 months, to then working on Wall Street and like, or being on Wall Street and like doing, how did you like, because some people would move into a room with their 2 kids, would do the secretary and get depressed and down and like, that's it, that's all they do. Or that doesn't work out and they just go, well, I'm going to go back to where I came from then or whatever. And it's just depressing. It's oppressive and depressing. And how do you pull yourself out of that?
So, well, so the job the 3-day job was on Wall Street, right? I walked into this place and, for this job. And I went back. Like I said, I packed my stuff and went back, stayed 2 weeks. Before the 2 weeks was up, the manager came to me and said, we like what we see, and we'd like to talk to you about offering you a permanent job if you're interested, right? And I got the job. I negotiated my pay, everything, just everything.
And this is just with you in those 2 weeks, just going above and beyond what they were expecting, and like just working your ass off for 2 weeks just to prove that you deserve to stay and have a job and for them to offer you a job. Did you expect to get a job out of the 2 weeks work, or?
I didn't know what I expected. I was telling somebody the other day that, because they were asking me, how did you? And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't do any of it. It was like I was on autopilot, and I kept saying yes to everything. And so I couldn't even see beyond the next day. I was worried about my kids because they were young boys, preteens, and they were in a strange city, locked in a house, in a room full of roaches, in a strange city, 2 hours away from where I worked.
And I suppose, 2 hours from where you worked.
2 hours on the bus, on the train.
Oh, my God.
So I had all that thinking about while I was going through a divorce and this new job. And I mean, I had no money, I was just working day to day and making sure my kids eat. And that the person who rented us the room was a real mortgage broker, somebody I worked with as a realtor. And I asked him how much the room was. He said, don't worry about it. And then later he told me $150 a week, but he never collected any money
Thank
from
God
me.
for that.
And so, that was the only saving grace, is that. So I wasn't expecting anything. I was just going through the motion. Yeah. But the way I work at everything I do, I've always been like this, is to do the best I can, because I feel that when I don't, it reflects on me. And so I am a firm believer, you are you, Inc. Yeah. And if I don't take care of, if I am not a good business, I'm going to go bankrupt. And so I've always, no matter who it is I'm serving, I serve them to the utmost. As a matter of fact, I always look at it that, my boss is God.
Well,
my boss is Jesus. So, and if you're pleasing Jesus, it really doesn't matter what you're doing, So that was my, frame of mind, and about 17 months after I got the job, I was laid off.
Wow.
I was laid off with full severance package, but I was only laid off for 3 months. I was back in another department 3 months later. I stayed there, and then I moved to another department. I was with the same company. Everything was with the same company. Stayed there for about 13 and a half years.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And so so you got the kids sort of settled into schools and all of those sort of things. But it was that initial like, right, we're going to go and do this 2-week job. And then it just like escalated into so much more, but then you're working, and then you go back to school and get qualifications as well.
Yeah, I went back to school. Wow. Yeah, I was working all day, then went to school at night. Yeah.
Nuts. And so, well, you have a podcast the same as I do, don't you? You've got a podcast that was SoloMoms talk and tools, of the podcast trade. So, well, you've got 2 podcasts.
So I have 2.
You've got 2 podcasts. Yeah. Sorry. God. Getting confused in my own situation. So, okay. So you've left work now, yeah? Or were you doing the podcast while you were working and studying and looking after the kids? I mean, the kids are old. I
stopped studying. I started the podcast a year before I left work. Yeah. But work was one of those things that I felt that I was at the end of, it was time for me to move on. And yeah, and this podcast was burning a hole in my heart. So,
I know.
I left.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's just very bizarre. Like, yeah. It's very bizarre how I listen to podcasts and then had an epiphany to do one. And it's just like, what? But yeah. So, okay. What was the greatest challenge? Like just moving the kids and going all that distance? What was the greatest challenge that you've had over that? Because 3 divorces, 3 kids. What happened to kid number 1? He was with his dad. Did he stay with his dad?
So he was with his dad until I moved, until the second husband left. Then he came and stayed with me. Yeah. Oh, okay. So he finally joined me. I think the biggest struggle was trying to, when I was younger and I would get a job and I would get harassed, I would just get up and walk. I had no trouble finding a job. And, if somebody was too hard because like I said, I always did my best. So if you're harassing me, you have problems and I'm not interested. And so I would just get up and walk. And when I had this last part of my job, I had somebody there who his job was to harass me. And it seemed like this guy targeted single moms. And I cried, I fretted, I couldn't sleep at night. And then my kids were getting into their early teens. I had them in a private school, but there was a public high school close by with the gangs who were targeting the kids in a private school. So I had to deal with some bozo on my job, who don't have any self-esteem, was harassing me. And every time my phone rang and I noticed it was my kid, my heart would jump out of my because I'm wondering what is going on, what happened, So I think that was my biggest struggle, is that, I had to balance keeping my job because I really didn't want to be bothered with other people. My MO was to run when trouble hit. And I realized I couldn't run. I had to stay because my kids needed me. So
yeah,
I think that was my biggest.
And I was going to say, bringing up 2 kids in New York, and I'm from the UK and Australia, but we are what I've heard about New York and bringing up kids in New York City is crazy. It's a big city.
Mm-hmm.
It's bigger than the cities we have over here. Mm-hmm. And the issues and problems that you've got. And how did you bring up your kids and keep them out of trouble and keep them on the straight and narrow?
Church.
Oh,
my youngest especially was having a hard time with these gangs. And I took him to church to a minister, with a youth minister. And I told him that my son was just not handling life because of all this harassment. And he took my son under his wings. He had a son about the same age as my son. And he took my son and mentored him. He treated him just like he treated his own boy. And I mean, in every way, if my son was being a bozo, he would, yell and scream at him. He was an attorney, worked in the youth court. So he saw the devastation that happened with kids in the system. And he just frightened my son away from, don't even think about it. So I was fortunate. My other kid, my second kid was he was a homeboy. He stayed home, just wanted to be home, hang out with mommy.
And what do your kids do nowadays? What is it? Because I think, haven't you got? Oh, I've got to get this right.
No,
have you got one in Europe?
Actually in Atlanta. So that's my oldest boy. He's married now. He has 2 daughters and 1 on the way. So I'm a grandmama. And the youngest his thing is dogs. He loves dogs. So he has 4 or 5 of them. So he's just, hanging out with that.
Oh my
My
God.
middle son is working and he's studying coding or internet security or something like that. So he's doing his thing. So they're doing what they want to do here, and they're healthy, which is all a mom can ask for, and they're staying out of trouble.
Healthy and happy. Yeah,
no
healthy and happy.
Baby mama drama, thank God.
Oh my God, no, I know. So look, how did you keep sane doing all of this though? Because like being bullied at work, and I've been there, I know what it's like. It's horrendous. It really can. Well, to me, it's like losing your mind being bullied at work, because you've got all these things to think about at home and trying to keep it on the level pegging for your kid. And all the trials and tribulations that goes on with them, and their bullying at school, and education and all of that stuff. But then you have to go to work and deal with the bullies at work, and you also want to make some money so you're not blooming poor and living hand to mouth as such. Like, how did you keep sane?
So I did, like I said, I joined the church. I am a firm believer in prayer, but I also started to take care of myself. And that didn't come by me just thinking I'm going to do that. I was running for the bus one day. I was running to catch the bus one day, something I never do. And my legs decided they weren't going to move. And I realized that I wasn't sleeping, and I was working 12-hour days, and I was just coughing my lunch at my desk and just going back to my keyboard. So I was doing that for years, just, not taking care of myself. And so
and you go through burnout, don't you?
Yeah.
You burn out if you continue to do that.
My body said, no, girl, you got to do something else before you can get me to move. So I found my feet and started to walk. And I found all the nice parks in New York City and walked my butt off. I mean, I've walked up to 7 miles, 28,000 steps, like once, just like that.
Wow.
One of the other things I do a sauna. I used to do a sauna very often. I've gone to yoga retreats. I do a colonics, like every so often. So I started to take care of myself in a profound way, not just, on the surface, not just a manicure or pedicure. I did things that people looked at me and said, "You did what?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." I took down transcendental meditation, so I started to take care of myself, and it helped me to focus on, I was writing an article the other day because I interviewed someone about self-awareness. And, you go through these motions, and as a solo mom, you're always fighting a war, there's always a war, right? And
there's always a battle.
But once you start to stop to look into yourself, because something's got to give, right? And once you start to look into yourself, you realize, wait a minute, if I can try to shift from fighting to actually try to live a little, maybe, just maybe.
Take a breath, take 5 minutes. Things
will start to shift a little bit. I mean, I got involved with, employee groups at work. I was, I was facilitating group situation. So I started to do things, started to get out of my head on, not that the situations weren't real, but I don't know how to explain it. When you push your life in your head, then life gets challenging when you keep it up here. But when you start to kind of, focus out, it gets a little better. It feels a little better, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, we went through lockdown here in Melbourne, 265 days or whatever it was. And it was just to get out of the house. My view is you don't need to spend loads of money. And if you've got kids with you, I mean, and there were times in lockdown where I couldn't go anywhere. I have no family friends who were able to look after my kids. We were in lockdown. We couldn't like shift the kids off to somebody else so you could have a couple of hour break. And my son wasn't seeing his father. So I'd take him to the park. Take the kids to the park. They go run around and go crazy. Yeah. And then you can at least sit and have 5 minutes of just breathing and like, yeah. Or even at home, sitting like, I hate to say it, but sometimes iPad is a godsend. I don't like having him on it all the time. But just to get half an hour breather, sitting outside in the sun with a coffee, he's unhappy on iPad, and then we go in, the rest of our world and our life. But yeah, I agree with you. And there's a lot of things that you can like do when you don't have your child, but when you do have your kids as well. Go out for a bike ride or something like that. Just to get out and get out of the house, get out of your situation. Yeah, man, nuts. Yeah. So, wow, I don't know, like you've had a hell of a journey. So what, if you could turn time back and you could talk to your 18-year-old self before you married husband number 1 and husband number 2 and husband number 3, what would you tell him? What would you tell yourself?
Don't even think about marriage. You're not ready.
Wow.
Yeah, it's true. No, you're not ready. I would have told myself, you need some kind of healing. You need some kind of focus before you know.
But the thing is, you wouldn't be the person you were today if you didn't go through all of that, though. That's the only other thing as well, isn't it?
True. Yeah. And I've often thought of that because the even the fact that life has been the way it has, and I've only just skimmed over my life right now. When I look back, I said, would I really change anything? And I can't see where I would change anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really can't see it. Maybe my granddad not dying is the only thing I would want not change, But even that would have,
No, I know. And it's like crazy though, isn't it? Because I'm similar to you. Like I look back and I go, well, there are times where I go, oh, I wish that hadn't have happened. But if that hadn't have happened, then it's like that sliding door scenario. Like where would I have been? What would I be doing? You just don't know. You just can't like say what you would do. So like, okay, so who or what has been your biggest influence to get you through all of the stuff that you've had to deal with?
I'm going to say Tony Robbins. I've been following him for a long time. I mean, maybe 30 years.
And, the big T.
Yes. And every time, and the time when I was doing my reflection and, trying not to blame other people for my misfortune, it was him I focused on. It was him and Joel Osteen. And so I went through Joel Osteen's book, Your Best Life Now, and I went through the journaling with that. But I listened to all of Tony Robbins' CD, and his he had all these, two of them, and I went through all the sets, right? And I was thinking to myself that if he believes that, and I listened to his story and how he started, and he gave me the power to believe that it could happen for me.
Yeah.
Because when
and the big Tony, like his mum was an addict, wasn't she? And he would live out. He at one stage got kicked out of the house and was living out of his car and was basically reading personal development stuff and things like that to try and improve him and who he is. So he's not like, I mean, he's a multi-billionaire, if billionaire. I'm not sure if he's a billionaire or a millionaire, but he's got like 30 odd companies, and you know, he's a driven person, done really well for himself. I know. I'm the same as you, right? I've read the books, got the CDs, and you know, listen, I've still got them here, right? So, yeah, like it's amazing. And I've got to say, when I was in my dark times, I had YouTube and stuff like that, but I don't know about you, but like I always, if I was depressed or needing to look to go somewhere, like I just felt lost and like just blur is the only way I could describe it, and just exhausted, I would go on YouTube and I would find up positive statements. I mean, Jim Carrey, I love Jim Carrey. I think he's awesome. He's an awesome actor, awesome artist. I love his artwork. And, you know, and he's had his challenges, right? He's not no saint, okay, by any stretch of the imagination, but there are certain things that he's, you know, positive things that he said. Tony Robbins, we've got a guy over here called Kerwin Ray, who's he's another guy who's awesome at, like, you know, just saying he's got ADHD. He was an addict and he's made several multi-million-dollar businesses. There's various different things. And so it was actually listening to that positive, driven thing that, you know, although I'm watching and listening it, I'm getting out of my funk, as it were.
Yeah.
And sort of going, well, these guys have done it. Why can't I?
Yes. Yes.
So what did you take on board then from the people that you were reading and listening to? What did you take on board to adapt and change your mindset then
Well,
what were you doing? Because you mentioned journaling. Now I know like journaling's quite big out there, but what was your journaling as such?
Well, I've been journaling from I was little, like from I was a little girl.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
you know, yeah, I didn't start when it was popular. I started by drawing stick figures. That was my journaling. And then once I could write, I started to journal. So I've been journaling, you know, I'm 61 and I've been journaling for, you know, close to 60 years. So I just I write poetry. I used to write a lot of poems, you know, whatever came out of my head. I just wrote it down. And so
it's a way of getting it out of your body, is it? So like you said earlier, like it's just getting stuff out of your head, getting out of your head.
Yes. If I had a headache because I was thinking too much, I grabbed a pen and a piece of paper and wrote. And when I was finished writing, I no longer had a headache. And I've done that exercise over and over and over again, and it has never failed me.
That would give me a headache, I think, having to write like that. But because I would go, oh my God, because like, yeah, English was never my forte at school. I was a maths, figures and facts and like, you know, but I've got to agree with you. Like if I'm ever worried or concerned about anything, I just write lists, pros and cons, get it all out on paper. I don't know if it's a female thing, but whether it's like just getting it out of your body so that you can process it. I don't know. Yeah. How do you deal with it? Is that what you do? Get it out and process it?
So I just get it out on paper. I just have it. It feels like, and when the expert talk about it, I understand, because it just feels like you have this weight on your shoulder, and writing in a journal, writing it down just takes it off your shoulder, right? It doesn't change much, but it takes it off your shoulder. The other benefit I find with journaling is that because I do this a lot, is when you review what you've written, whether it's 5 years before, 10 years before, 20 years before, you realize, 1, how far you've come. 2, nothing's changed. 3, man, did I really do that? So, you know, it gives you some food for thought, you know. I'll give you an example. I actually wrote a blog post about this. I love to write. So when I first became a real estate agent, the broker who trained me told me, we just want you to take your time and learn the first year, because no real estate agent make a sale the first year, right? And I'm listening to her going, I made 4 sales that year. But before I did all of that, I had written in my journal, I'm going to sell 1 million in real estate this year, right? And I did 2 million.
Wow.
Now, when I reviewed what I wrote, I realized what I meant was I was going to make 2 million in income, but that's not what I wrote.
Yeah.
You follow? And
no, but yeah.
So I said I was gonna sell. So the value of the real estate I sold was 2 million. I didn't make the $1 million, because that's not what I said I wanted. I said I wanted to sell $1 million in real estate. Do you get the difference? Okay. And when I was reviewing that years later, I realized like Tony Robbins said, you must be specific in your goals. Do you follow? So even if I made a portion of $1 million, I would have reached my goal. But my goal wasn't, because I didn't write it down, that I wanted to earn $1 million. I wrote that I'm going to sell $1 million. Do you follow? So journaling helps me in that way. I also wanted to point out that after my third divorce, when I was reviewing all the different things that, went wrong, one of the exercises I did that Tony Robbins suggested was, when you're looking for a mate, not that I was looking for a mate at that time, but I wanted to review, right? He said something like, if you're, everybody say, I want a good man, but are you a good woman? Right? And he said, look, make a list. What is it you're looking for in a man? Make a list. Then on one side, on the other side, make a list of, do you have those qualities? You're looking for a kind man. Are you a kind woman? And I did that exercise. True. I really did that exercise, and I took it seriously. And like I said, I wasn't looking for a man, but whatever it is I was looking for in another person to give to me, I wanted to be that person to that person, to someone. Do you follow? And so I found that exercise really beneficial to me as a person, because it helped me to grow. It helped me to, do an inventory of who I am as a person, and then working on the stuff that I wasn't happy with. Yes. No, and I agree with you. I'm 4 years out. I'm very happy on my own. Maybe I will find a man. Now I'm saying I don't want a bloody man, but I'm happy. They'll be coming out the woodworks. Yeah, I know. Here we go. It's like, we'll be bombarded. But no, but I'm quite happy. I've been on my own for 4 years now. I'm very happy. I've got awesome mates, male and female, and my time's busy. I've got like a 7-year-old in a week's time. And so life is busy, and I'm out and I'm doing things, and I sort of don't want anyone coming into my life and imposing into my life as such. Yeah. But I know what you say, right? It's about looking at you and going, okay, well, what do I want what do I want in my life? What do I want to be able to impart from me to my son? There's addiction within my past relationships, not my addiction, but my ex-partners are addicts. And so it was about breaking that cycle. So my son's father is an alcoholic, and basically it's about breaking that cycle so that, my son has the best chance of being able to be who he wants to be without having to deal with the addictions and all of the other stuff that goes with that. So, so it was about looking at yourself and going, how do you improve yourself? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Wow. Well, I've got to say, a mate of mine, so I'm 51, so there's 10 years difference between you and me, but you look a hell of a lot better than I do. And when I was 22, a friend of mine bought me
a Tony Robbins Unlimited Power, I think was the book
Unlimited
that
Power.
my friend, he was an ex-boyfriend, but a friend, bought me. And so he said, here you go, have this. I think you need this. And when I read that, like way back when, and you have to keep reviewing it. You can't you gotta be on top of all of this stuff. But so I understand completely what you're doing. So tell us what you're doing now, because I'm fascinated with what you're doing now. I'm very jealous, but I'm fascinated with what you're doing now.
So I have this really bad habit of things happening to me, and I just keep, I can't let go of stuff, or stuff won't let go of me, right? So I started this podcast. I'm a solo mom, and I really wanted to go on this journey and hear other people's story. But the journey to the podcast and the subsequent years since was tough. It was difficult. And I'd say 90% of it was mindset. So I'm a big mindset fan. I call myself the mindset maven just because of that. I realized that we hold ourselves back with the mind, right? So that's why I started the second podcast, Tools of the Podcast Trade, because I started a meetup group of new podcasters or aspiring podcasters, and I saw the answers they were asking. I hear them, and I'm like, that was me, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And so I have this meetup group that I meet with every now and again and answer questions. I love to write, so I blog. I blog quite a bit. I've blogged on Medium. And as a matter of fact, I'm right in the middle of creating a course. It's funny you should mention journaling on Gratitude Journal. Monday is World Mental Health Day. So it's something I'm doing for, in honor of that, to recognize that.
But you're in control of your own destiny, aren't you, really, now?
Yeah.
Because you're not working for a company or anything like that. You're actually in self-employed, basically working for yourself.
I'm working for myself, and actually I'm working from Mexico right now. So I'm
because you can work anywhere you want.
Yes.
Which I'm pretty jealous about.
You live in Australia. You should not be jealous of anybody.
Well, I know.
Everybody's jealous of you.
But I have a day job, right? I have a day job that I have to go to. This podcasting is a hobby for me, which is great, and a fantastic hobby. But so anyone out there who's listening, I'd love to do this full time. But it'll get there. It'll be eventually,
Yes.
But yeah. So, okay. So hey, look, if people wanted to get in contact with you, if my listeners want to get in contact with you or find out what you're doing and stuff like that, or listen to your podcast, are your podcasts still active?
Yes.
They're still active, aren't they?
Yeah, of course. I can't resist it. It's like not sleeping if I don't post. So Tools of the Podcast Trade, if you want to listen to podcast experts, and SoloMoms Talk, if you want to hear SoloMoms stories. And they're quite interesting. And a couple of blogs, SoloMom Talks, and each podcast have their own blog and their own YouTube channel. So,
So just basically, if people put in SoloMoms or Talk and Tools of the Podcast Trade, if they put those into Google, then your stuff should come up, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it pops about, 10, the first 10, whatchamacallit will come up.
And I'll put the links in the blurb anyway into people. And look, if there's any single mums out there who want to come along and talk to you, get in touch with you. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I'll always interview a solo mom. Always.
Yeah. No, we need to get them out there, because there's other solo mums and dads who are out there who think they're the only ones going through this life that we're dealing with. And basically, We need to say you're not the only ones. We've been through it. Don't worry. Yeah. We stayed sane. It was all good. Yeah. It's hard. It's a roller coaster, but it's good. It's all right. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I started this podcast anyway. So look, final question for you. Final question, Jay, Rosemarie. And I think I know the answer to it, but hey ho. What book would you recommend to my listeners and why?
Who Moved My Cheese? But you weren't expecting that one. Who Moved My Cheese?
No.
It's a story of finding your balance when life pulls the rug from under you. Yeah, it's about mice. It's about mice, and we're busy looking. They always went for the cheese. Cheese was always there, and one day the cheese was not there. And the book talks about how some reacted and how some, how they reacted differently. Like these two mice, each one reacted differently to the situation. And I felt like as solo moms, when if the man leaves us, like my husband got up and walked, I didn't even, I didn't even know. The rug was pulled from under me. So was I going to just fall and die, or I was going to get up and brush myself off and look for work and, take care of my kids. And so that's why.
And what they say is,
book.
Yeah, and what they say is like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah. So it's like, you just got to get out there and do it. I mean, really, I look at some of the things that we go through as single parents, and I just go, wow, we got superpowers, people. Mm-hmm. Like, where's just, we just get on with it. And you have to. You got little people, depending on you. They like look up to you and think, well, and it's hard. And there are times where you like lose it because your kids won't go to bed and they're running around the house going nuts and stuff like that. But that's why I called this podcast Strong, Single and Human, right? Because we're strong, we're single, but we are human at the end of the day. Yeah. And we've got to stop punishing ourselves and start looking at the positives and being grateful for what we've got and getting on with it and saying, well, how do I improve on what I've got? Change our mindset, change our states, set our goals and move ourselves forward, just like you did. Yeah. And now you're working for yourself in Mexico, having the best life.
I am, yeah.
It's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. God love you. God love you. Well, look, I'm thinking it must be nighttime in Mexico. I'm trying to think whereabouts on the blooming timeline you guys are. It's 6:30. Oh, it's not too bad. It's time for dinner and a glass of wine.
And it's
time for dinner and a glass of wine. God love you. And it's like 10:30 here for me. But look, thank you for coming on board, telling us your story, telling us how you got through it and how you stay sane and stuff. And maybe I can come on your podcast, Solo Mums. I'm a solo mum. Yeah, so we should sort out a time and get on your podcast.
Yeah, well, I'll send you the link.
When we can clear up our time frames between Mexico and Melbourne. Yeah. But no, that would be awesome. Look, I'm going to let you get on with your evening because I'm sure there's a glass of wine calling your name. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and telling us your story.
I appreciate you, Claire. I am so happy to be here. I'm really honored. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources and show notes, go to our website www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.